All right, all right, all right. Oh, did I just mess up my camera here? Let me put it out here. I don't know how I did that, but yeah, you guys can see me now. I'll move it around a little bit tonight. Hey, thank you for joining us tonight for our fireside chat, and we are live. This is our third week of doing it in this platform, and so just so excited. I got some guests that are lined up over time. It is so funny. I don't know if you can see it a little bit, but I'm going to move this mic down a little bit just so you can see me a little bit better. But you can see some fire right here, which I'm excited about because I happen to be in Boston this week, and so I have some grandchildren that just moved away from me in Colorado, and I was really sad about it, and not being able to see them. And so this week we're helping out and taking care of them, and flew out here. I didn't know there was this many people on the East Coast. I just like, where are all these people? Because it was just people after people and density, and I'm used to Colorado where we have like land. And then if I travel north, I end up in Wyoming. Going further, I'm in Montana. And the further I go, the less people there are. Now, I do go to California every now and then. That's where my kids grew up, but it's still, the density is not the same. I think you could probably drive from here all the way to Florida and not have a spot where there's no people. It is just crazy. I heard a statistic that 65% of the U.S. population lives in the Eastern time zone. And so when we think of 15 in the central, and Texas is big, it's got a lot of people, but it's really big. And then the Pacific time zone, only 15%. We're five in the mountain time zone, but I am enjoying it out here. This is a real fire. If I hold my hand here, I'll be snapping it back real quick. And so when I was thinking about the fireside chat and making sure that we're there now, I am challenged a little bit technology wise, so might have to reach up and hit the keyboard and that kind of stuff. But I think we're going to have fun tonight. And so, Michael Stone, I have Michael Stone on, and him and I were able to do a podcast a month or two ago, and he became one of my favorite people to talk to, one of my favorite people to listen to. I've listened to our podcast several times, and I don't always do that. Um, but he really talks about trauma, and tonight I wanted to dive into trauma and trauma-informed care and what trauma does. And we were able to go through. If you want to go back and hear his whole story, he gave us it was a good chunk of his story and the things that he is. And you're looking at him today, he's smiling and all the things that have happened in his life and all the things that he's been through. And so, for those of you who are saying, there was some trauma in my life, or were there some things in my life that, I just don't know how to get over. He wrote this incredible book on trauma, and one of the things that I believe that people who are reading his book believe they were going to get a book that was about him and his story, and which a lot of it is. But what you really get is you really get, oh man, this book is about me. It's about how I responded, how I didn't respond, maybe how I should have responded. And so I'm going to encourage you. We'll take a couple cuts out of today to just make sure that you know to go order this book because it is an amazing book. So, Michael, as I'm sitting out here and I'm all calm and this beautiful stars, well, I don't know how many stars, it rained a little bit earlier. Kind of just talk to us a little bit about your life and why, I guess, trauma. I mean, you went through trauma, but why was it the magnet and the emphasis for you to like write books on trauma and help other people with trauma? Because a lot of people, I think, that go through trauma or have these things that happen in their lives, but they don't want to talk about it anymore. So what
Mhm.
separates you as we kind of go through this today?
That's a really interesting approach, Brian. I have to say, I am a certified trauma poster child, I would say.
Mhm.
Um, and you just brought up something for me I wanted to share, and that is that often we carry our trauma. For me, it was like a story I was almost telling about someone else, because I had
Mhm.
at 2.5, I found my mother hanging. My parents were at Pearl Harbor. My father was completely absent. Lots of horrible stepmothers. One of them named Severe. Uh, great maiden name for a Dickens would have loved that one.
Mhm.
And then, of course, my dog's hanging, and then my wife's rape and murder, and 42 years of being a suspect for those things. And I it wasn't that I didn't talk about it, but it was like I was talking about someone else.
Mhm.
So integration, healing trauma is about integrating trauma, where when we have an overwhelming situation in our life, the nervous system is an amazing intelligence. And it will, when we have an overwhelming situation, it will fragment a part of our essence and lodge it in the body as tension or numbness, hyper or hypotension in the body. And so integration is really about I felt all the things. I'm not stuck in things that were unfinished from the past, either my own or my family's, or ancestral or collective trauma. And all of it works together, and we all are traumatized. Don't think you're not traumatized, because it may not be you, but you've got legacies of your ancestors, the culture. You know, we were talking about fear to talk about tonight. We can maybe get to that later, but um, trauma integration means that I've been able to soften, slow down, and meet my past, my unfinished past, which is what trauma is unfinished past, in a way that I've been able to feel the things that at the time of the overwhelming experience I couldn't feel. I was shattered. I was, you know, those were frozen in my body, and they keep taking energy, which is of course what causes illness. 60 to 90% of all illness on the planet is stress related. Stress is about trauma. And if you look at the state of the world today, every single issue, whether we talk about climate change, whether we talk about racism, whether we talk about um, uh, war, political unrest, all of it, at the heart of it, trauma. And what trauma is unfinished business from the past. And so trauma integration, when I integrate trauma, it's no longer a story that runs me. I don't react to it. It's just my story. It just happened. So when I'm integrated with trauma, it's just a state of presence. I'm here. I'm emergent. I'm speaking for whatever's moving through me. I'm not reacting to my environment or to other people or to my story. Unintegrated trauma, on the other hand, is destiny. We're bound to repeat these things over and over and over again until we stop, slow down, and take an opportunity to feel the thing. Now, sometimes that's too much for someone else. So maybe you go to a therapist. By the way, talk therapy does not touch trauma. You need somatic trauma because trauma is lodged in the body. But we were wounded in relationship. All of our trauma is in one way or another related to someone or something else. So that's why I started trauma circles 5 years ago with 12 to 15 people in each one. And then when I'm working and I say, gee, I'm really scared, I don't feel like I belong, I have a lot of scarcity in my life, all of these are trauma symptoms. And I say it in a group of people, and half the people go, yeah, me too. I feel I don't belong. I feel I'm not enough. I feel I'm weak, or, you know, I'm not smart enough, or all these things that we carry that are the residue of trauma. So that's a short overview.
Oh man, that is so good. When I think about, you know, the trauma that you're talking about, and I think about the loneliness that I start to feel with people in the times that we're in, whether it's because of social media or it's because of the trauma in their life or it's because of not knowing how to consistently maintain relationship. You know,
Yeah,
whether I don't know why we're taught not to, or you know, it was different back in the day, but it just seems like there's this overwhelmness of folks that are trying to understand relationship. And I can imagine in your trauma circles, as you begin to unpack that, are you finding that people are saying, wait a minute, it's not, you know, I couldn't have controlled any of this, and I shouldn't let it stop me from having great relationships. Are you able to get there, or is it,
oh,
you
absolutely.
know, yeah, maybe talk about that a little
Absolutely.
bit.
So there's a number of different kinds of trauma. Like I said, there's ancestral, there's collective, and there's individual or
Mhm.
familial trauma. But um, when you really uh, much of our trauma, a lot of our trauma comes, and including ancestral trauma, comes from our early developmental stages. So if I was not felt seen, heard, held, and protected in a way that I was nurtured, I had a loving presence, a parent or a guardian that looked me in the eyes with a love and belong, and you belong here. If I didn't have that, that's a problem because we learn to self regulate ourselves in co regulation. If we didn't have co regulation, which is being felt, seen, held, protected, all of those things, if we didn't have that, we don't learn how to self regulate. So when these traumas come up and are overwhelming, we don't know how to deal with them because we didn't know how to self regulate. That's another reason I do it in a circle, because then you learn from the circle. You have co-regulation with the circle, and then I can learn when a huge trauma comes up or I'm overwhelmed with some situation, I can allow myself to slow down and soften and be with it, but I can also, share what that's like with someone who's willing to be emergent. Emergent means I'm not talking about my story. I'm sharing how my story moves in me, how it reacts in me, and the things that happen. And one of the things we do in the circles that my teacher, Thomas Hubel, taught me years ago that I love is feeling myself, feeling you, feeling me in the space between us. That's a practice that we do for months and months and months to create safety and to deepen the trauma healing and increase our capacity. And capacity means I have more space. Literally, when you're traumatized, you're contracted, you're closed and shut down. The more you integrate trauma, the more space you have. The more space you have, the more creativity, the more insight, the more um, uh, manifestation you have, the more awareness you have. So, space is like, the two things that I work with people a lot is space and energy. Space is stillness, space is spaciousness, space is, the capacity to be with somebody. And and space is the paper that the book of life is written on, and the writing is the energy.
Gotcha.
So as I evolve, and this is how we grow our soul. It's as we work with trauma, we grow our soul. So just another short blip there.
Oh no, that is so good, and I'm enjoying this already today. I'm getting full just as from the things you're saying. One of the things that I think that when people think about whether it's therapy or going to somebody else groups or something like that, like when I think about a group, I think of like what's that, Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that, where you go and you sit and then you go through, get these coins and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just wondering, like with trauma, is it something that I know you're always healing, but is it something you have to go to, like have groups and have people your whole life, or is it something that you get through? Or kind of talk to me a little bit about how that process works.
Yeah, well, as I said, we're wounded in relationships. So if we
Mhm.
can't do it ourselves, and often when we have a lot of trauma, we can't do it ourselves. We try to do it, and we practice things like meditation, and we end up re-traumatizing ourselves. But
Mhm.
so so it's really powerful, and oftentimes impossible to do it just ourselves. There are times when we have a sudden awareness that comes and we go, oh my God, I've been pushing down these parts of myself. you know Healing trauma is about dealing with a shadow. Jung said that. He said, where the shadow is, there's the work, right? The shadow are those parts that I don't want anybody to know about me, and I don't want to talk about them or deal with them. So the shadow, though, is where so much energy for growth and uh, recreating ourselves and being more able to live a full creative life, I think. And that's really a lot of what, we need to do this now, because trauma creates separation. And look at the state of the world. That's the first impact of trauma. We live in a traumatized world, that we've normalized trauma. It's like looking through a broken glass or a windshield. You ever have a crack in your windshield? Yeah, you're from Colorado, I'm sure you have, right? You get that crack in the window, pretty soon it's not really there. It's like we Photoshop it out, or it just disappears. Well, that's what we do with trauma. It's just like normalized. Oh yeah, well, wars are natural. It'll always be this way. It's always been that way, and it'll always be this. That's the resignation that comes with trauma.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm going to bring a Walter in, and I know there's other people. If you are watching this live, or you're on Facebook, or you're watching it on YouTube, I am monitoring to be able to, to answer your questions. But Walter's been kind of in our background in our room. I'm going to add him to our stage here. And Walter, do you have any questions about trauma so far, or go ahead and ask any, and then I will
No,
move forward.
it's a great good evening to both of you, by the way,
Hi, Walter.
and Brian, you're not that far away. I'm up in the beautiful Adirondacks in upstate New York, about 2.5 to the northwest of you, and we had our first snow yesterday. So,
Oh my gosh.
it's winter is around the corner for sure. That's traumatizing to some of us, but that's okay. No pun intended, or to make fun or make light out of trauma. But so interesting. I had a couple of good conversations on my podcast with a couple of guests about trauma, because it is something that we need to learn to process. And so the first thing I would, and you gladly you reiterated this, that you should not do this alone, and that is really, really important. The second part is that I spoke to, and I posted a podcast earlier tonight of one of my friends who I worked with a couple of years ago, and he has an underlying trauma, but he really never explored it until he went to a Tony Robbins event. And at that point in time, on day 3 or day 4, when they go into this deep meditation, priming, all guided, looking deep within oneself to look for that self-awareness, and when it started bubbling up, and that's really a decision need to be made, is there a trauma that I can process, as Michael says, integrate it, and can I put it in its place so I can grow from here and become more aware and more present, or does it require more work? And I think that's the critical point that people need to learn to recognize. What is it that I can work with myself, or when is there a critical mass that I need to go seek help on a professional level?
Yeah, it's a great point, Walter. Really appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot that we can do, and the more we actually do trauma work with others, the more we have a capacity to work with ourselves. So, you get triggered. What happens? Trauma leaves you getting triggered. So often the things we're upset about, the things we're angry about, the things that we fear have nothing to do with what's actually happened. They happened in the past, and we have never completed the cycle of those unfinished parts of our past. So meditation, contemplation, prayer are all things that we can do. Slowing down and softening. Right now, one of the symptoms of trauma is moving fast. And right now the world is moving fast, and we need to slow down, actually. Particularly with AI and some of the other impacts of social media and AI, which is a whole nother conversation. I have a whole chapter in my book about that. But to do deep work is to have a safe space where people can get together and really dive into the areas that they mostly wouldn't talk about in their family or in polite company or even unpolite company. It's not something we do. So there's a lot of things that we can do ourselves. Like I said, meditation, contemplation, prayer, and we can also do a lot of reading to understand. But the cognitive isn't going to help. But if we read people like Peter Levine or Gabor Mate or well, many people. And right now, my brain is going in another direction. But there's some really good books, and many of them you'll see on my website and think welloflight.com. But we need to work together. The currency of the future is community. And that's what I love about Brian's Fireside Talks and the works he's doing, because we are not going to heal the planet as rugged individuals. So that's one of the issues. We need to understand the difference between individualism and individuation. Individuation is that thing that happens when I was felt, seen, held, heard, protected, and I got the sense of a self. But when we didn't have that, then much of the response to the trauma is, I'll be the rugged individual. I can do it on my own. What's that song? I did it on my own, So individualism is killing us, but individuation is the maturity of the soul and the capacity to integrate those unfinished cycles from the past.
So, when I think of like you're saying with the individualism and the, some of us had, like you said, was held, loved, all those things, and now we integrate with other folks that haven't. And I don't know if there's empathy that we're missing, or we just we it's hard to walk in somebody's shoes if you haven't had any of the things that they've had. How do we, as folks that are surrounded by folks, and if we're not willing to learn their lives, we're willing to have conversations with them, or not, I'm not saying willing, we want to, we just don't know, because we're in our own little driven planet of, I get up in the morning and go to work and come home and do, how can we walk side by side, not understanding, but are trying to understand, but maybe saying the wrong things sometimes, or not communicating that empathy, like, oh yeah, I don't know what you've been through, so I could care less. You're on your own, type of thing. And I think that so many of us want to make sure that we're, I guess, cognizant of other folks, but just not know how to do it.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, first of all, I'm just thinking of a poem by a Chinese poet, Wang Po. He says, "Why are you unhappy? Why are you unhappy?" The poets always repeat themselves, right? He says, because 99.9% of everything you do and say is about yourself, and there isn't one. And there isn't one. That's the punchline.
There is no self. Okay.
No separate self, right?
Uh-huh.
So, divine law is not two, no separation. So we have separation. So the first thing we have to realize is how, begin to notice how we keep ourselves separate from others. That's a starting point, is that we are born into a culture that thinks, I talked to you about 2 ways of knowing yourself the other day. Knowing yourself as you're over there in Colorado, I'm over here in California, and that's, there's this distant, we're objects in a world of objects. But a more real way of knowing is to know my nervous system. You show up in my nervous system, I show up in your nervous system. And so my capacity to know you is directly proportionate to my capacity to know and understand myself and who I am. So as I build that, I actually connect with people, whether they're going to do it or not. So oftentimes it starts with an intention, with a commitment to, I am going to grow beyond this. And that commitment starts when I say, I'm going to go heal. And it's starting now. I might step away from my family. I might have to step away from the work I'm doing. I may have to start that journey. I may have to start really listening to my inner GPS. Who is it in here that voice is talking to? And when I do that, Brian, when I begin to do that and integrate, I begin to ground and create more inner space. And even if the people around me aren't doing the work, it will impact them. When I do my inner work, it impacts who I'm with. You know, when you're with somebody that you just feel really comfortable and good because you feel seen and felt and heard, you know, that's
Yeah.
somebody that's doing their inner work.
Oh man, I love that. Paul joined us today, and Paul, I don't know if you have any questions at this point, but you're more than welcome to ask them and jump in. You know, as I'm working as hard as I can. And I think the last time we talked, I told you I worked in homeless services for a while and was really, had folks that were around me on a daily basis. And I thought one of the best things that I could do is not try to fix anybody. Like based on my experiences and my stuff, and that's what we try to do, right? Like I try to do it with my family. I try to do it with my wife. I always try. I don't know if it's just because the way I grew up or because I'm a man or that's what I thought I was supposed to do. But it seems like so much of my life is spent trying to fix somebody. And what I realize, if I just listen, that's what people want more than anything is just to be heard, not
Absolutely.
necessarily the solutions to it, right? I mean, maybe walk me through some of
Why?
my
Brian,
problems.
why do we do that? Why do we do that? It's because we don't want to be with our own discomfort with the grief or the sadness or the fear or the thing that the other person is going through. So, one of the things I work with is the 4 levels of listening.
Hmm.
The first level of listening is just projecting on someone. It's like I'm watching a movie, I'm projecting on you. And that's just me projecting outward. The second level of listening really is I notice, oh, there's a person there and they're saying things and I can actually interact. It's still 2-dimensional, but it's a higher
Hmm.
level. And the third level is what you're talking about, the empathic. That means I'm in my body. This is the thing. I'm in my body feeling you. I'm not projecting on you. I'm not, objectifying you. I'm not preparing my answer to your question or trying to fix you. I'm actually embodied and I'm present with you. And that's an amazing level. That's the empathic level. But the fourth level is an entirely different level. And that's the level where I'm in 4-dimension. So we move from 2-dimension to 3-dimension to 4-dimensional. So now I'm in my body, you're in my body, and there's a merging. What Dan, God, I'm forgetting names today. Dan Siegel, very amazing neurobiologist and philosopher as well as therapist and psychiatrist. And he talks about intra-being. So you would say that the third level is interbeing. There's something moving between us and it's powerful and I'm embodied and I can feel you and I can feel your body and your emotions and your thoughts. But at the fourth level, intra-being means within. And I'll give you an example of this. You know, uh, Before my wife was killed, we did a lot of work with doing BWIS, which actually came out of a landmark thing from my early time of teaching landmark courses. And we were doing a BWIS and we were sitting on the floor. We'd been cleaning our Victorian house with a toothbrush, uh, and working on impeccability. And we said, let's take a break. And we sat on our cushion and we looked in each other's eyes. And we would do that for 5 or 10 minutes often. And one day we were sitting there. I was looking in her eyes. She was looking into my eyes. And all of a sudden we had this incredible experience of, oh my God, I'm looking through her eyes into my eyes, and she's looking through my eyes into her eyes. And it was so startling. We both like jumped up. But this is intra-being. This is when we merge together because we're so present with each other that there's no separation. That's level 4. That doesn't happen a lot. Rarely, but it is something that most of us have had some example of, that kind of, full intra being rather than just interbeing and interacting.
Yeah, it's like you almost know what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and you just
Not even
you
almost.
react. Yeah, you are
This is
doing
what
it.
I,
Okay.
with a therapist, I have to always be, feeling into them. When I'm working with people, I'm not feeling just them. I'm feeling their ancestors behind them. I'm feeling the impact on their collective and family. All of that is available with attunement. Attunement is uh, using, I mean, it takes a long time. I've been doing this for over 50 years, and I'm just starting to learn. So,
Man,
uh,
oh
but it
my
takes
God.
practice, but we can reach these higher states, and we need to. Again, uh, uh, community is the collateral. It is the um, yeah. The future is community. The
Yeah.
currency of the future is community.
Yeah, as you were explaining those, was I was thinking of like the Hollywood movies that brought me into, I believe it would be level three, where you're just feeling, some of the documentaries, like I can think of like a Saving Private Ryan or Braveheart or something like obviously the characters are written in, but Hollywood with the music and all that stuff brings you into your feeling. There's even some shows, I guess, where you're celebrating criminals because you feel so bad for them, in their plight and the things that they're doing. And you're like, yeah, you got to rub that bank. It's got to, because you deserve it. And at the same time, you go, okay, so how do I, in my everyday life, as I come across people, get as far away from that projecting listening as I can, as quick as I can. I mean, I was part of it, and I also try to put myself, and maybe you can talk to that, how do I get away from it? But sometimes, when I have like road rage, or I'm in the car and I'm doing something, and I soon as I get that thing that bubbles up in me that I'm mad at that person, I begin to try to say, well, what happened to him today that had him want to, I guess he could just be a jerk. But at the same time, I'm trying to think, trying to put myself into what is it that could have been so bad in his life, or why is he in such a hurry, or why is he so angry and he doesn't even know who I am? How do we jump into that kind of thought
Yeah.
process instead of just that predictive lessening?
So a couple of things distinct, I use a lot of distinctions in my work, and
Hmm.
one of the distinctions is distancing, watching how much I distance. So where I
Okay.
pull back, or where I'm absencing, I'm completely gone, or where other people are distancing and absencing.
Hmm.
So that's something, again, when you're in your body, you can more feel both when you do it. When I go away, I come back, uh, it's interesting to, it's like when you actually look, like I was driving up to Tahoe from here, it's an hour and a half drive. And I went an hour, and I couldn't remember anything that happened or that I saw on the way. And I realized, where was I in that hour? How did I not have an accident in that? So this capacity to recognize when we distance and when we absence ourselves is really a powerful thing to pay attention to. Also, can I be in my body and be with you at the same time? Because oftentimes my trauma will pull me away. So I'll be with you, but I won't be in my body, or I'll be in my body and I won't be with you. But can I be in and out at the same time? Because I have two lenses. I have the lens that is my interior, exploring the interiority. I call it somatic anthropology. I'm digging into the layers of grief and sadness and joy and all the things in my body. and and so then that's one lens, the inner lens, and then there's the lens that's the outer lens. It plays on the same screen, but they're very different. So how I see you, how I perceive you, but can I stay in and out? And that is a practice, Brian. Just go into the
Hmm.
supermarket, and with the customers, with the clerk, with the people around, practice seeing, am I in my body? Can I feel my emotions? What are the sensations I'm experiencing? What are the thoughts I'm having? And then also be out and be with the other person and see, what is she feeling today? why did she give me the finger or on the freeway,
Mhm.
or why did she be so angry with me? You know, and how did that affect me? What got triggered when she was angry, and what stories have I made up about myself to protect myself when I think someone's angry at me? This makes sense?
Oh, so much sense. And it brings me back to like parenting, right? And one of the things that is my fear so much, or was my fear. I mean, my kids are grown now, and now you got the grandkids that are running around. But as I've grown, it's like I want to not mess them up. But I got issues that I'm going through, that I'm feeling, and then how do I not bring that home to them? How do they not see who I am? And I recently talked to a group of kids, and they were warning me, the teachers and the folks at the school were, telling me how, this is what I guess they called it, a Title I school or something, which is predominantly, I guess, lower income, but it's also lots of issues in the community, lots of refugees and lots of kids that had so much trauma. And I was just thinking, well, as a parent, and you've gone through, whether it's ancestral or it's just straight trauma, like the stuff that you saw when you were a kid, how do we take ourselves, like you said, filling out and make sure that, or not make sure, we don't want to hurt our kids, but we can't separate ourselves from what's happened to us?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good what you're saying. It's I think the first thing that comes up for me is staying in our body. You know,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
raising children is the most important thing on the planet right now, and to raise
Hmm.
children in a way that's conscious. I think I gave an example on our show. If I didn't, let me give you an example of a very, I did with you, I think, very subtle thing was what I talked about the dog and the child, and the child's
Hmm.
crawling and the dog barks and comes back and says, Daddy, Daddy, the dog's going to eat me. I'm scared. I'm scared. And Daddy says, there's nothing to be scared about. It's okay. Don't worry about it. The dog's not going to eat you. That's Fido. And,
Hmm.
and then the child, well, yeah, something, that sounds like an innocent thing to say, but the child's going, well, wait a minute, something's wrong because my daddy says I'm not supposed to be scared, but I am scared. So something's wrong, and something's wrong with me because I never make
Hmm.
my caregivers wrong. It's always something's wrong with me. And then I adapt to it by not speaking up or becoming the smart one or the helper. I take on all these roles to cover up the trauma that I'm having. And that seems so
Hmm.
innocent, easy. But what happened was I answered as the father, I answered an emotional request with a cognitive answer. And that's a
Yeah.
trauma. That's a trauma.
Yeah.
Now, what's the
Yeah.
opposite? Oh, the same situation, crawling, the baby, daddy, 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 I'm scared. And I go, oh, sweetheart, come here. Come up here. Sit on my lap. You know what? I get scared sometimes too. And if daddy gets scared, it's okay for you to be scared. So when you're scared, just be scared.
There you
Totally
go.
different.
Yeah.
Child goes,
Yeah.
oh, okay, and goes and jumps on the dog and rolls around with it. It's the fear just dissipates. But if it's not done with awareness, now you can repair.
Hmm.
You can create a repair with someone by saying, you know what, I realized the other day that you felt you were scared, and I said, don't be scared, but you know what I want to tell you? It's actually I get scared sometimes too, and it's okay. So you can repair things like that, but you got to know that it created a trauma. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then there's
Right. Right after.
and then go ahead, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, finish.
I was
I
just going
want
to
you to.
say, then there's when you grow up in a household where it's not safe, where it's dangerous, where there's beating and yelling and things that have been passed down. I'm not blaming parents for this, but I can see the lineage how they get passed down. How you are in relationship is how you were in how your parents were in relationship. You learned. You know, show me the thumb, I'll show you the thumbprint here in the relationship, right?
Oh my
So,
gosh.
but it's
Well,
an important. And another thing, Brian, let me say one more thing, because questions are not necessarily meant to be answered. Sometimes
hmm.
questions need to be walked with. You know, Rilke said a beautiful thing about that. There's a quote that he's writing to a young artist, and he says, you know, live into the question. Someday right now you can't answer that question, but someday you might live into the answer by walking. I'm adding my part to it, by walking with that question, by having it be a walking question, not to answer it like that and say, oh, that's because of this, because the question will bring up all kinds of things to be wondering and curious about if you walk in the question. But the minute you say this is the way it is, you've shut the door on possibility.
Gosh. Oh, that is so so true. I remember it took me to, like, I don't know, my senior in college as a communication major to understand what a rhetorical question was. You know, that they weren't meant to be answered. That it was, hey, we're just putting the thought so that you can sit with it, so that you can process it. And I think we're in such a hurry in our society in this the day and now that we live in, that we don't take time to process. We
And
just
that's
we
a
hear,
symptom
we
of trauma.
go.
Hurrying
Yeah.
is a symptom of trauma. I got to go fast. So you can never outrun fear, no matter how fast you are. I was a marathon runner. I was fast. I could not outrun my fear.
Yeah. I right after you told me that story about the dog, I don't know, I had there's something that showed up on one of my feeds, and it was a small, probably a 3 or 4 year old in the airport, and one of those I guess DEA dogs, came up like right face to face with that 3 or 4 year old, and just started barking and scared the little kid, out of his wits. And then the captions and everything, because just, it was, I don't think the dog was going to like bite his face or eat him. It's probably trained not to, but the way that it barked and the way that it started in on him, and then you realize that the parents had put whatever that drug was in the backpack of the kid to get through the airport or to get through security. And then to have that dog do that, I'm just thinking, oh, there are parents out there that would just go ahead and, like, well, we have our livelihood to be able to feed you. So if you get scared to death by this dog that was, I mean, it was a bark that scared me as an adult, and I'm watching this and just thinking, oh my gosh, are we at that point now where there just some parents that shouldn't be parents? I mean, that shouldn't bring kids into the to the
Yeah.
world, and yet when he gets older, who's going to have that empathy for that child? Not only is he that happened to him in an airport, but now that happened to him, he'll probably relive that because it's on video, it's on tape. People will probably show that to him over and over again. He'll probably have to relive it. I mean, is that what happens as with our technology and the things that we're doing with, you
Oh
know?
God, technology. You know, I have that whole chapter on technology in my book. So, uh,
Yeah.
but let's not go there because it's a huge subject. We could spend another
Okay.
fireside.
Yeah, we got another
We
15
haven't even
minutes left.
gotten into fear here. But
Yeah.
yeah, but that trauma is going to be in that child's body until he can feel the fear that he was having. And so what happens is we're constantly pushing the fear down. And we already pushed the fear down at that time. The nervous system and its intelligence pushes it dissociated, it pushes it away. So when we say I want to get rid of the fear, we're pushing it away again. And the nervous system's on high alert and it goes, no, 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 you can't do that, because it's trying to protect you. The nervous system wants to protect you, but it's still living these parts that are in the past. So in order to uh, heal, and healing is wholeness, healing is integration. And again, I'm coming back to, I can't turn away from the fear. I have to turn towards it. I can't suppress it and try to get rid of it, because that just reinforces it. I literally have to feel it in my body. And I'll tell you, feeling it is painful, but not feeling it is not only painful, more painful, but it will cause dis-ease, disharmony in the body. 60 to 90% of all illness is stress related, and stress is a product of trauma.
Trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
How, I mean, is there good stress, or that stress that we should have, I guess, when we think of the fight or flight and our body's response to something that's dangerous, and or the stress that says, wait a minute, body, if we can recognize it, your body's under stress because you've gone too far. How do
Yeah.
we regulate that, or show it, or is it just all stress? We should try to figure out how to live a life with none. What?
No, you're never going to get to no stress.
Yeah,
And stress, can be a motivator. Only some people use it that all the time, and that causes heart attack, cancer, fibromyalgia, all the autoimmune diseases are all come from that. Um, but no, there's many ways. I teach people methods. Like, one method is havening. Just slowing down and just going like this. It's called havening, and that can lower it. Some people that are particularly ADHD, that's something like that. Other ways to deal with it is shaking. Just, shaking when you're feeling it. That's what animals do. You see a zebra attacked by a lion in the savannah, and what happens? The zebra plays dead. The lion goes away, and the zebra gets up, and what do? They do this. You see it every time you watch the films of what's happening in the savannah, and
yeah.
so shaking is another. There are many ways that we can calm the nervous system. I love qigong. I was a runner, till in my 50s, but I now I do a lot of qigong, and because it's slow and I'm working with this energy, and my work is more and more deep, working with more and more subtle energy.
Hmm.
And that's comes out of my, I taught shamanism for a decade, and studied that for many years too. So many of the things I use are shamanic practices, different ways of cutting cords, and having power animals, or doing soul retrievals. But that soul retrievals is what got me into this, because I was doing soul retrievals with people, and they'd have a good session. I'd do the drumming and do the whole thing, and work with my and their allies, and then people would have great experiences. Then they'd come back a week or two later, and they'd have the same issue, and I go, it's great to have a high experience, but you're not getting rid of the bloody issue. So
Yeah.
so that's what I realized. So wait a minute, what is a soul? How do you learn? How do you lose your soul in the first place? How do you get it back? And so then that took me into trauma, deep into trauma. And the last 10, 15 years, that's pretty much where I put my focus is, what is it that creates trauma, and how do we integrate trauma and create a world of post-traumatic healing?
Yeah. So one of the things and then I want to ask you about your book, but one of the things, when I wrote my first book, it was called There Is No Tiger, and it was based on helping folks through overthinking and consistently that anxiety that comes from, projecting into the future all the things that you think are going to go wrong. It's my horrible, no good, very bad dad is going to happen to me every single day, and every single day I'm going to wake up and all these things are going to happen to me. And we know that very little of that ever happens. But how do we help people from, I guess, future trauma that they believe is going to happen, and they're traumatizing themselves based on just a thought? I don't even know if it's something based on something that already happened in their life, but I mean, literally they're shaking, and they're, public speaking is one of those. You ask somebody to public speak, and all of a sudden there's all this trauma, and they haven't even stood on stage, they haven't even said a word to another soul, but the thought of that happening is taking them through this amazing overthinking and anxiety and everything else. How do you? I mean, I know you know people that are like that. What are some
Oh,
things
I
that you
was
can
like
do?
that. I call it awfulizing. My grandmother
Awful,
had
like
it.
okay,
Awfulizing. Yeah. Everything, the, the, you know, I'll tell you a story example of it. So the day that my mother hung herself, I was 2.5. And
mm,
it was just after Christmas, and I had gotten a Lionel train set.
hmm
And I came running downstairs that morning and excited to see my train set because I'd just gotten it, right? And my grandmother was there, and I had, I guess, turned the transformer on. I don't know how it happened, but the transformer was on. And she started screaming at me, saying, "You're going to burn the house down and kill us all."
wow,
A few hours later, my grandmother cools down. We go to Golden Gate Park. I play in the bushes, my safe space in the bushes. And I come home. I run upstairs to see my mother, and I see shoes hanging there. And there's my mother hanging there.
hmm
My Most of my life, I had this sense that it was my fault because I left the transformer on. And
wow,
until I could unravel that with awareness and say, wait a minute, I was an innocent 2.5-year-old child. How could
yeah,
that be my fault? So what happens is when you begin to integrate it, the physical integration of feeling the fear that something's always going to go wrong, something always is going to be bad, because I would worry my dog was going to get run over. Here I had my dog was hung. I had all these things that reinforce that bad things are going to happen. So I know exactly what you're talking about through experience of that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then when I went back though to that situation, and it isn't always going back to the situation, it's going back to the felt sense in the body, the emotions in the body. And when I felt into that, well, wait a minute, I was an innocent child. I wasn't, the source of that. And I realized that fear that I held kept me hyper vigilant. And my neuroception is always, I'm always looking. We don't do this consciously. We do it unconsciously. Is it safe? Am I safe? What's going to happen? Who's here? Many of us have this hyper vigilance, and men are particularly bad because we've been handed down a lot from not only war, but our tribal days when there were saber-toothed tigers and things.
yep,
So this fear is primal. It's connected to our early uh, early ancestors. So
hmm
the kind of lost my thought there for a second. So the recognition and the feeling, the felt sense of that is what creates more space, more capacity to, and then the mind can make sense of it when the body understands it. The mind can't make sense of it until the body can feel it.
okay,
We can't
okay.
heal what we can't feel.
I like that. We can't heal what we can't feel. Man, that's so
And
good.
then,
So
you know,
yeah.
there's been a coup. There's been a major coup. The
Mhm.
head has taken over the heart. It's supposed to be the other way around. The heart should be in charge. The head is
Yeah.
running the heart. But when we begin to do this kind of work, we go, wait a minute, I can tune in. My heart has a capacity that's unbelievable. They measure it out at least 10 feet, and that's only what they can measure, the energy. You can fly over somewhere in a helicopter in the middle of the night and
Mm.
spot somebody down below because of the energetic field that is around them. That's how they find people lost in the woods and things. They can see that with the
Yeah.
infrared and pick it up.
Wow. So Michael, somebody get your book. and it's a pretty good sized book, but is there the right, there we go, perfect, is there the right person that should read it? I mean, to me, it's for everybody because we're all parts of the book. Or is there? Should
Yeah.
we start at chapter one and go straight through? Should we look through? Hey, this is what I think I'm feeling right now, and start there. What would be your suggestion as the person who wrote it that was trying to make sure that
Yeah, it's a great
we're
question.
helping as many people as possible?
So my book, the story is pretty chronological.
Okay.
Each chapter, as you know, has a different trauma, a different area. But I wrote it, so I told the story that what happened. Then I, as an adult, as a senior citizen at this point, I then look back and I write the reflections of that. How did I deal with that? How did I know about that? And then the third part of each chapter is a teaching. So teaching about attachment styles, or teaching about what I said about individuation and individualism, or teaching about what happens, in a therapeutic setting, or when your dog dies. Each chapter has another area. So you can just open it up and start reading it. I think you mentioned, and it's the thing that most people say to me, I thought I was buying a memoir about you. And when I read it, I found out I was really, reading about my own life, because I could relate to everything, even though the circumstances were different. The structures of healing aren't any different. So you don't have to have been a trauma poster child, but we all have trauma. There's no, if you say you're untrauma, you've never had any trauma, then basically you're just not aware, you
Yeah.
know,
One of
because
the things that,
especially when you systemically as a movement, a system between the ancestral and all the ways back through history, and the collective, and my own life, uh, then you see that it's much bigger. There's a much bigger crack in the windshield than I thought.
yeah. One of the things that, and I was going to ask you this question about faith, and it'll probably be as we finish up tonight, but I want to broach it because I think there's so many folks that, where when we think about faith and religion, and the fact that, folks that I say that are Christians, that or I think about Catholicism back to the day. So many things have been done to create trauma against on the backs of, because God told me to, or religion or faith or something like that. And then I also know that some folks that are strong in their faith, or believe they're strong in their faith because of whatever the religious errors or the things that they've been involved in, are so, well, I'm not going to read a book like yours because he talked about, well, I was involved in teaching shaman stuff, or teaching yoga, or all these things that people talk about, but they act as if we're all not human sometimes. And I want to deal for the folks that are like, I can remember growing up, this is crazy, right? So we're watching Star Trek, and they're beaming people from the ship down to the earth, and my mom's like, well, we can't watch Star Trek anymore because that stuff's impossible, it can never happen, and that would go against what God has for people. And I'm like, wait a minute. My mom laughs about it now, but I think some people get so much into, well, I'm just going to pray and God's going to take care of it, and then I'm going to be okay. And sometimes those are the most dysfunctional folks that are around because they're not willing to face. What would you say with your book and all the things and the folks that you've interacted with that have strong faith backgrounds, that are believing that, I don't have to do anything on this life other than just pray, and then God will take care of it. And, you know, which I think God uses people, myself, a whole lot, but I would just
That's a
love you
big
to just talk
that's a
about
big
that.
question, Brian. That's a very big question. I love it. Um, Unfortunately, I'm getting close to when I'm going to need to leave. But let me
Okay.
talk. Let me talk about that. I have talked to a number of Christian groups,
Hmm.
and been very well received by them. One distinction I like to make is between faith and hope. Uh,
Okay.
so hope is basically postponing the past. That there's some place out further that things are all going to work out. And I'm not a big fan of hope, because it literally takes us out of the present. But faith takes us into the presence. If I have faith in, not like not like everything's going to go smoothly, because faith is what helps me get through. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
prayer of Saint Francis. It's give me the strength.
Yeah.
So faith to me is a very important part. I'm not a fundamentalist. Because faith tells me personally, and that to trust that I'm here. I have the right to be. I have the right to belong, and I have the right to become. The three human rights. Being, I'm here, so I know I have the right to be. Oftentimes, I have a struggle with the right to become, because it threatens my right to belong. If I'm in a relationship with someone and they suddenly want to go on a spiritual path, and I'm not interested in that, that's a threat to my belonging if there's a shift in my becoming. So,
Yeah.
but all of that is part of a part of my faith, is to honor the right to grow, the right to belong, and the right to be. And when I have faith, what I'm saying when I have faith is that I'm attuned to my inner GPS. So my GPS guides me. I allow myself to hear the voice and the presence, that is indelibly, it's always coming through me. That
Mm-hmm.
vertical, download of presence. So yeah, that's what I'd say about that.
Well, thank you for that. And I didn't realize how because we're going to talk again and have, and my whole thought process is that I am a Christian, and I do believe, but there's so many, and I love the fact where hope is postponing the future, and faith is what allows me. But I always look at it as, who's God sending me to help me through this? Because I'm not going to probably audibly hear him, the next thing, I do believe he can heal me, but is he going to send me a doctor? All those things. And when I think about trauma, is he allows those things to happen, so that we can be in relationship to get through it. So I think there's such a synergy between your book and faith and the things, and I just hope that as people are listening today or listening to our conversation, that they're not believing, well, this guy is so out there, or something, that you go, wait a minute. No, we have those things that have affected our lives, infected our bodies, infected who we are, and the best thing that we can do is be in places in relationship, to be able to get through them. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, I can't believe, Michael, our time. Like I said,
I
I
gotta
could
run.
sit down with you. Yeah, I could
It's
sit
so good
down
to
with
be
you
with
and
you. I love
talk.
hanging out.
Yes, I can't wait. So I'm gonna let you get to what you're doing. For those, go ahead, subscribe. We're gonna do more shows. We're gonna do more of this. I can't wait to have you guys in the future, Michael. I can't wait to talk to you. I'll be sending you stuff, and you guys have an amazing day. Don't forget your God's greatest gift. He loves you, and we can't wait for that
Yes.
trauma to be taken away, if it, as much as it can be, as you go get his book. So go get this book. I promise you, you'll be happy that you did. You guys see you later. Have a
Thanks,
wonderful,
Brian.
amazing, awesome day. All right. Talk to you